Want to drive faster? Listen in as Kinch Rendell, an SCCA National Trophy winner and multi-time Pro Solo champion himself, interviews the best autocrossers in the land. He talks fast and drives even faster. And now here's your host, Kinch Rendell.
Today's show features Dee and George Schweikel. They are 100%ers. They've been to all 44 nationals and looking forward to more. They are both national champions. Dee won back in 1973, the ladies class, the first year it ever existed. It was an index class. They have a lot of knowledge going back a lot of years. George has been a member for 50 years. That'll get you a free lifetime membership. We should all look forward to such things. They drive a great-looking Alfa Romero Spider. In FSP, I can't believe it hasn't been kicked out of the class because it looks so good. I hope you enjoy the show. If you get a chance, I'd really appreciate it if you'd go to iTunes, search for Autocross Talk, and leave us a review. Also, you can connect with us on Facebook, give us some thoughts, recommend some other people to interview, and also on the website, you can connect there. You can send me an email off the site. You can also sign up to receive a very, very, very occasional email back from me. And as part of that process, I have 5 questions or so that I ask for your opinions and thoughts on the show. I hope you enjoy it.
Today we have George and Dee on the show. Guys, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
You guys have raced for quite a while. Take us back to what was autocross? What first got you into this?
Well, I was the first one, and I'm originally from Michigan and transferred to Lexington, Kentucky with an employer in 1959, and I had an Austin Healey 100 and found the local SCCA region, and they were actually having a gymkhana, if you know what that is. And it's a combination of events doing silly things like navigators spearing potatoes and backing up and everything. And then one of the events was called the slalom. Well, everything else has passed by the wayside, and the slalom has evolved into what we knew as Solo 2 or Solo.
Oh, nice. Autocross. So they called an autocross a slalom.
Yeah, it was gymkhana means multiple events. It's an equestrian term that came from the British Army in India, where the soldiers mounted on horseback would play games and do tricks and demonstrate skills with their horses. And I guess it kind of morphed into an automotive thing. And only one of the things that they did was actually driving through the kind of course that we know now as an autocross or a solo course. And they did other silly things. They had navigators, and the navigators would bust balloons and spear potatoes and do other silly things like that.
Oh, so they would do something out the window.
Yeah.
Well, didn't one of the cars that you drove, George, have a roof opening and you leaned out the top?
It was a BMW Isetta, if you know what that is. It's a little microcar where the door is in the front. You open it up and walk in and sit down, and the steering wheel folds down. And they didn't have side windows. It had a sliding sunroof, so I was introduced as the driver of this thing, and I was to be his navigator, and I had to kneel in the seat and slide the sunroof back and lean over and spear the potatoes or bust the balloons or whatever it was we were doing that day.
So it sounds totally like, okay, we used to do these things on horses. Horses can go front or forward, backwards.
Yeah.
We should be able to have a chariot and somebody on the side with a sword or a joust.
Yes, yeah, exactly. And I think, as I said, that was 1959, and it didn't last very long.
Insurance companies probably shot that down really quick.
I don't think there was any such thing at that point.
I don't really remember, and it would be interesting to talk to somebody that's really versed in SCCA to find out whether they even had a national insurance policy at that time.
Yeah, that's just crazy to think back. Gymkhana, okay, they did this on horses, and hey, we'll do this hanging out of cars.
Right, exactly, yeah.
Yeah, so take us back to, you started, what was some of your first memories of autocross? Once SCCA was around, or when you really got hooked into it?
the chapter in Lexington, Central Kentucky region, had just been given a charter. They were the Central Kentucky Sports Car Club, and I think the year before they became Central Kentucky Region SCCA. And it seems to me they had some, for want of a better term, Mickey Mouse type events, but eventually evolved into what we know now. They were a lot shorter and tighter than what we see right now. And the region that's still my region now, early on, couldn't afford pylons. So one of the members worked in the grocery business, and they used upside-down fruit baskets as markers.
Oh, so what was an upside-down fruit basket made out of back then?
Wood. A lot of my friends have said I've been autocrossing since pylons were made out of wood, and I said, well, actually, that is true.
Oh, my goodness. So those were probably quite destructible and maybe a little scratching to the cars.
Yeah, you didn't want to hit one. They had wire on them and things like that. So, of course, this was way before the down or out rule where the pylon was in the box. For many, many years, the issue of whether a pylon was hit or not was up to the judgment of the corner worker.
Oh, wow. Okay. So not even a box around them, per se?
Oh, no, not at all, no. I can recall at one point, and I can't tell you what decade it was, when they were evolving toward a better method of determining whether a pylon was hit, they would put a string or a tether on the pylon and tie it to a tennis ball, and the tennis ball was placed on top of the pylon, and then if the tennis ball was knocked out, then that was a penalty.
I love it, yeah.
I'm not making this up.
Yeah, no, I want to say Howard Duncan mentioned as much as well. Somebody else did definitely mention that. And the string must be tied to something so the ball doesn't just bounce and go far, far away. That probably was the first attempt there.
Yeah, so the corner worker wouldn't have to chase a tennis ball across the parking lot.
Oh, I hope they gave you like 40 seconds between cars or 35 to stand the cone back up, put the ball back on there.
Yeah, well, in the early days, the timing wasn't nearly as sophisticated, and it was quite some time before, at least in our area, where they had the capacity to run more than one car at a time.
Oh, gotcha. Okay, so it was, you had more time between. D,
yeah, sort of like 3, 2, 1, go.
Yeah. D, what was your first memories of autocross?
When was my first? When we got married in 1968. Actually, I guess it was a year or so before when I was introduced to the sports car club here and met George, and we actually met at an autocross.
I still think an autocross is one of the best places to meet a guy these days. There's lots of guys. You can see how they act under pressure. They like competition, what car they drive, how they take care of their car, or in my case, don't. So did you race right away, or did you watch for a while?
No, I hopped into it pretty quickly. I've always liked cars, and so I tried it out in my car.
Which was a Ford Fairlane convertible.
Yeah, that's right.
And what do you guys...
I guess it would have fit in the cam class now.
Oh, exactly. Maybe you should bring one back. Get one and go cam it up.
Yeah.
And at what point did you guys ever start buying wheels and tires? When did that come around to switch to?
Well, let me think. Because in the old days, all the cars were daily drivers, and tires were not considered to be that important. We used to pump the tires way up, where now on our compound tires, sometimes you go down in pressure. The first tire that was, in my mind, that was a real high-performance autocross tire was something called a Phoenix Stallflex from Germany, and I learned later on it was a sub-brand of General Tire or Continental Tire or something like that. It was before the early Yokohamas. The Yokohama A001R was the first really, really hot tire. But the Phoenix, it seems to me that we got these in 1977 or 1978, because that was when we each won a national championship with those tires. Then the Yokohama A001R came out, and the tread looked like a farm implement tire. We couldn't understand why it was so fast until we understood that it had a really sticky compound.
Oh, so it looked unconventional compared to other things, but that didn't matter.
It looked kind of ordinary. Yeah, it didn't have a high performance look to it, but it certainly had high performance.
Nice. So the stickiness all of a sudden is like, whoa, that looks funny, but it definitely grips.
It definitely gripped. Yeah. So then with the Phoenix tires, those are still daily drivers, and we ran a 1971 Alpha up to the early 80s. We bought an Alfa Romeo Spider in 1971. And right toward the end, when the street prepared class came along, was when I actually started buying separate tires and separate rims. And during that era, we had bought an RV and we bought a trailer just for the convenience of doing it. So at that time, the higher performance tires could be left on the car, and the car arrived at the event on our trailer.
Nice. Take me back to those first championships. Did you prepare a car? Did you buy somebody's car? What got you good enough to win that first championship?
Well, D1, the ladies class, which is an all-encompassing, I can't think whether it's a handicap or not. I actually made some little notes here. At the first autocross championship, she won in 1973. And there was just one ladies class. And then in 1978, she won ladies class E, and I won... D stock, and that was with the 1971 Alpha, and then D1 again in 1981 in C stock ladies.
I've not been in C stock yet, but I tried D stock for many of a year, many. Yeah,
these were more ordinary cars. Well, the Alfa Romeo was a real hot thing until the initial RX, the Mazda RX-7 came along. And when the 914 Porsche went to a 2-liter engine, then they became pretty high-performance cars also. So the Alpha Spiders sort of filtered down through the ranks, the results.
And how often did you guys change cars back then?
Well, for autocrossing?
Yes.
We've only actually had 2 cars in all the years. We had a 1971 Alpha Spider that we bought in 71, and in 1983. A friend had a 76 Alpha that he had done some street prepared work, and and we had other street type cars during this era. But then in '83 we bought the car that we still have now, a 1976 Alpha, and it started out in A street prepared, and then it went to C street prepared and D street prepared, and now it's in F street prepared.
And let me tell everyone listening, it is beautiful. I will put some photos up on the website to show you.
Okay.
When you think of FSP, you're thinking, oh, yeah, like that Sprint that you and Van play with. No. This car is immaculate. I had to stop and take photos and introduce myself. Amazing. It doesn't belong in FSP. We got to create a pretty FSP.
One of our good friends, Brian Hoover, that runs runs a Sunbeam Tiger out of Columbus, Ohio, has a body shop. And some years ago, the Alpha, like all Alphas, was getting rusty. The rocker panels were made out of red duct tape and things like that. And we took it up to Brian and said, we just need a generic paint job on it. Just make it red. We don't want anything fancy. And then he started emailing me pictures where they used to be screwed on fender flares, and he was bonding them to the body, and he was going down to bare metal and all that sort of thing. And I realized that my budget wasn't going to cover all this. And then when time came to pay, he quoted us about a half price and said, now would you put my logo, my body shop logo, on your car? And it's been on there ever since.
Oh,
so the
nice.
car was painted in 2003. So It's still a fairly old paint job.
Wow, it looks good.
Yeah, it's a good car.
I love that. Stuck with 2 cars over all these years.
Yeah.
Did you ever co-drive any other cars or play around at testing tunes?
Yeah, we've driven other cars. We've driven an Alpha all but 1 year, and a couple of years ago it broke, and a good friend, Raleigh and Velma Breen from Indianapolis, had a very nice CSP Miata, and they said, let us make you an offer you can't refuse. Take your time rebuilding your engine and drive our car. So that would have been it's been 4 or 5 years ago now. So we haven't driven Alphas for all the national championships, but we've always driven red convertibles.
Okay, so if somebody wants to entice you, a red convertible is probably the only ticket.
We like red convertibles, yeah.
So what was it like? How did you get seat time way back when? I always assume seat time's what gets most people competitive. What were you doing? How many events were you making? How were you getting that seat time?
Well, we ran local events, and then SCCA in the old days had a very large division called Central Division. Now it's been split up into Central Division and Great Lakes Division. But the old Central Division, not through me, but some people up in the Indiana and Michigan area, let's see, we had divisional championships once a year, and there was some out of town events, but basically we ran local stuff. Anyway, these people decided that a lot of the competitors from the Midwest would go to the national championships and not do very well because they weren't used to it. They weren't used to the spectacle and the enormity of it. And they came up with a concept. They said a lot of the cities have major standalone events. Let's go get some sponsorship. Let's tie these events together, make a series, more people will come, it'll be tougher competition, and we'll get better. And it was known as the Central Division Yokohama Solo Series, and we understand that was the actual template for what they call the national tour now. So we would run 1 year, I think they would have 8 events. You know, we would go as far as Iowa or Michigan, Ohio, Indiana, what have you. So that was where the seat time came from.
And we used to run about 3 weekends out of each month.
Yeah, 3 or 4 sometimes, but we don't do that anymore.
So y'all did get a lot of seat time. In addition, a group of you said, how do we really get better? We need more competition. Yeah. Let's set the series up to get that competition.
The series still exists. Now we're where we are in Lexington, Kentucky. We're in the Great Lakes Division because, as I say, you can see the Great Lakes from Kentucky. And they do still have a series of 6 to 8 events a year, but we haven't run that recently very often.
Yeah, but I just like the idea of people that want to get better are finding ways to do it. They're setting up different series so that you can get that competition.
Oh, sure, absolutely. And technology. I saw somebody walking one of the nationals courses this year with an image stabilizing camcorder, walking the course, obviously making a video that was going to be studied probably that night.
That's interesting. I know that GoPro's coming out with a new drone that has the stabilizer in it that you can take out, and they said you could mount it to yourself, I've seen, and also to a car. I was thinking,
oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I
this
bought
was a pretty big one. This is kind of the thing that you actually see movie producers use, where you can walk along, and it had sort of an you could see the camera, and you could see some sort of a mechanism or a spring-loaded, whatever the heck it was, that the person was holding. And they were holding it down to what my assumption was driver's eye level in the car. So somebody was using technology to really make a good video of that course that they could study.
Yeah, they could fast forward it. I actually bought and brought to Nationals, but I didn't figure out how to calibrate it, a handheld 3-axis gimbal. Same thing as what they're coming out with for the drone and that you can take off of there. It is amazing how stable it can make going over cobble roads. Somebody's riding a skateboard, and it's just like you're like, really? They're going up and down? It's moving so quickly to keep the camera, or in this case, my iPhone, stable.
I'll be darned. Well, the data acquisition now, of course, has reached very, very high levels. We have some people here that use it. One of our members, a woman, just won her 4th national championship, and she's a big data acquisition fan. Yeah,
so back then, you guys couldn't do that. You were just getting seat time, and probably were you riding with people, getting people to ride with you?
A little bit, yeah. We just kind of went out, or at least I did, just went out and drove. Part of the fun was finding the course, and it wasn't anywhere near as sophisticated as it is now.
Plus, as many people as they run through, I could not believe we had over 1,300 people at Nationals this year.
That was amazing. Yeah, that was really neat.
So when y'all started and made 4 or 5 or 10 nationals, did you realize we're going to keep doing this as long as we possibly can?
I don't think consciously we did. We just got in the habit of doing it, and we had the kind of jobs with enough flexibility that we could go. And then we started meeting friends and from all over the country, and so it's a good time to see everybody.
Yeah, I totally agree. It seems like that's what brings so many of us back over and over again. Yes, there's some competition, but now you have friends, and this is where you get to see them and hang out with them.
That's exactly right. We've known Ron and Karen Babb for several decades, but we only see them in an airport someplace or a parking lot.
Where are you going? To a parking lot to hang out with some friends.
Parking lot. Yeah, right.
What other thoughts do you have? Like, what are some of the things that stand out, some of your favorite memories?
Well, I'm sitting here, and in anticipation of the call, I made a list of all the nationals up to the point where they settled in Salina, Kansas. And you probably know, if you've talked to Howard Duncan, that individual regions used to put the national events on. And then the National SEC office finally took it over, I think, in the early 80s. But they started in St. Louis. They went to Lake Geneva, Wisconsin, Salina, Kansas, Columbus, Ohio, Fort Worth, Texas, Wichita, Kansas, back to Fort Worth, 2 Salinas, and then Chicago. And then they settled in Salina until they went to Topeka, and then from Topeka to Lincoln. But I'm thinking back to Hutchinson, Kansas, which is Wichita, in 1978, and it was at a naval air station that had, while they were having the autocross championship, the solo championship, they were also having some sort of skydiving competition at the same time. And my memory is, at one point during the solo competition, they actually had to shut down the runs while an errant skydiver landed in or at or near the course. So that kind of sticks out of my mind. Early on in St. Louis, the first national, you had to buy the course map, and my memory was that the course map was wrong, which is pretty interesting. In Chicago, in 1982, in Chicago, they had at a big amusement park called Great America, and they had a very nice course laid out, and at the last minute, they had to move to a smaller parking lot, and all their course maps were printed. So they merely shrunk the course rather than creating the smaller parking lot was certainly it was just one course was large enough to have a perfectly good autocross, but they took their big design and shrunk it down, and it was pretty Mickey Mouse. And they ran, as I recall, into the dark.
Oh gosh, yeah.
A lot of people were very unhappy with that, and the Chicago region back in the day was a real hotbed of autocross or solo activity.
Be like, hope you have flashlights and or really good lights.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, thinking some other areas. Golly, one of the Salina events, one of the early Salina events, they actually had 2 courses in 2 airports in Salina, Kansas. And like a lot of these municipalities, when the government's through with them, they give them to the city. And one of them, that Rocky Antwerpen was a real guru of organization out there, was at a long, narrow airport. So he did a lot of slaloms, and there was what had been an old military officers club there, and they didn't have formal, seems to me, not formal trophy presentation or not formal parties, but we were gathered around, I guess, at the end of the second day or the first day, and I heard the unmistakable sound of a fist impacting somebody's face. And apparently a couple of the guys had been agreeing to disagree all day, and after spending some time near the beer cooler, it got a little out of hand, and somebody tried to break it up, and I think he had his jaw broken and actually had to spend the night in the hospital. So things have gotten much better organized and much more civilized in those old days.
That's one thing I like about solo. People are so nice. I mean, competitors let you jump in their car to compete at nationals when there's breaks, and
exactly. The incidents of in Lincoln a couple of years ago, somebody broke an oil pan. One of the Sea Prepared guys, and a bunch of them gathered together, and the next thing that they knew, the engine had been taken out of the car, and the oil pan had been taken off and welded and back in, and it seems to me the guy actually got to complete some runs that day or something. It was a mass assistance type thing. And Sea Prepared is known for that anyway.
Well, remember Mike Mayer fixed our car one time. What did he weld something or?
Mike Mayer, when he was first starting autocrossing, a bunch of the guys had come from California, and I had a Panhard rod brace brake on the Alpha, and I said something about going into a shop or into town to find a welding shop, and somebody else said, the Sea Prepared guys are kind of welding type people. Maybe somebody has something. And lo and behold, these people had brought a support truck with welding gear, and Mike took several hours to weld the thing back together again. So that was how we met Mike, who's gone on to multiple national championships.
Yes, and if you talk to him, say, hey, I've requested to be a friend on Facebook. I'm ready for him to get on the show as well.
Mm-hmm. He's a very nice guy.
Yeah.
And it's not like he was helping one of the people in his class. He was helping somebody in a totally different class that he didn't even know.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's so great how people did that with my Civic. It broke, and there were like 5 or 6 people. Competitors were loaning me the pieces to put it back together. Just incredibly, like, wow, I was so excited. I'm like, I can't believe they got that together. They took the whole
restores
suspension.
Your faith in human nature.
Yeah, exactly. We're like, wow. That's right. The stories of people sharing a car with the person that's in second place to their first place, and just goes on and on. Have you guys done any other racing? Have you ever spent any time on track?
Yeah, we're members of the Alfa Romeo Owners Club. And, well, way back when I first had an Austin Healey, I went to an SCCA driver's school up a couple of weekends, but never really continued that. But the Alpha Club conventions are held around the country, and they don't have wheel-to-wheel racing, but they always have time trials. So we've got just some pretty interesting tracks, because they have those all over the country. A couple of years ago, we got to run at Infineon Raceway, which was really neat out in California. And rode Atlanta, Lime Rock, Elkhart Lake. Yeah, a couple of years ago, we were at a place called Thompson, Connecticut, and I used to read about Thompson, Connecticut when I was in high school in Road and Track magazines, and we learned it was the oldest paved oval in the country. They built it in the late 30s, and then they built a road course around it, and the same family owned it, and they had recently revitalized it and redone the road course and had a golf course and a country club, and it was quite nice, but it was pretty unique. So a lot of Dee doesn't do time trials anymore, but I still do it. So all the track event stuff has been with Alfa Romeo Club activities.
Nice. And did you first autocross, or did you do some track times first?
Oh, no, it was autocross first.
Okay.
Way back in the day, yeah.
Yeah, from my little bit of track time, doing autocross has made it so easy to at least be on the track. The turns seem so nice and slow and big. I shouldn't say slow, but just the amount of time you get through to get to the next turn.
It's like one great big autocross, and then you get to do it again, over and over again.
Well, in this past summer, we went to the Alpha Convention in Nashville, and then they had their time trial at the Corvette Museum, new track in Bowling Green, Kentucky. So we got to try that one out.
So you guys still have an RV, and do you drive to these different events?
Yeah, we're on RV number 4 and a trailer, so it makes it easy to dry camp. And we always do that. And sometimes particularly if we go to the Alfa Romeo Club events, we make a vacation out of it. And so we've seen a lot of the country, and it's a real treat.
But we didn't always do it that way. In the early years, we just drove the car.
Have you guys made it to Packwood?
No, we drove by it one time. We actually were at an Alpha convention, possibly in Seattle, and we're going up to Vancouver area, and it seems to me we actually went through the town of Packwood and saw the big site that they use. It's a shut-down lumber processing facility.
Yep, exactly. They even paddock inside those buildings.
Neat. Pete, that's great.
I bring that up because that's the most beautiful place, most unique place ever autocrossed. Which of those places that you've been to really stand out to you as a place that you would wish that we could either you could go back to or that we could still race there?
For autocrossing?
Yeah.
Well, one of the most unique locations, right off the top of my head, is downtown Detroit, right next to the river. When they used to have the U.S. Grand Prix in the streets of Detroit, I think Turn 1 was in a great big parking lot. And for several years, we would go up there. That was one of the Central Division series, and it might have also been a divisional championship. Seems to me we were there at least 3 or 4 times, maybe more. But it was very, very scenic. You're right on the river, and a very interesting location.
Yeah, neat. I can only imagine all the different sites you already made it to that we don't have access to anymore. That some of these have to definitely stand out to you, like, oh, that was kind of unique.
Yeah, let me think. Gosh, when we went to Fort Worth, it was at something they called the Great Southwest Raceway, and it was the original or one of the Dallas-Fort Worth airports that had been shut down, and they still had the administration building and everything. Kind of eerie-looking place. It always reminded me of an Alfred Hitchcock movie because you'd see they had long corridors for were the original airport terminal, all shut down with broken glass, and you could always imagine some mystery movie being made.
That reminds me of Utah. We would be out there. I'll blink on the name really quickly. Right there on the border, Utah to Nevada. Same thing. They got a couple hangars, a few planes come in and out. It's like, whoa, this place is just out there in the middle of nowhere, being another Air Force base. Another great concrete lot.
There was a couple that came into the Central Division that used to live there, and I'm trying to think.
Wendover. I can't believe I forgot
Wendover.
that.
Yeah.
There you go. That's it. Yeah, they would talk about Wendover and how big the courses could be.
Yeah, they even started breaking up probably about half of the lot. It didn't matter. It still was a place that, as of, 5-6 years ago, I would gladly drive out there. And people would go out there for local events because the courses were so big.
Yeah. Well, there's a place in Michigan up north of the Thumb called Oscoda. That's an old Air Force base. And the Detroit region has big autocross events there.
Nice.
With lots and lots and lots of concrete.
How much have the actual courses changed over the years? Did they go from small to big to small? Have they been kind of per decade the same?
The memory that I have is they always used to do, at the national courses, they always did a turning start and a turning finish. And I think it came from the early days in Salina, Kansas, where the pavement was a narrow airport runway, and they didn't have that much runoff room. You'd run into the paddock. So at the end of the event, you'd have a short 90-degree turn. Then, at some decades past, they still do turning starts, but they don't have turning finishes anymore. I remember a phenomenon that they talked about at the national level called speed creep, that the courses were getting faster and faster, and they actually made some effort to sort of slow things down a little bit. And they've been the courses we run in Lexington are on a fairly small parking lot, so the turns are more close together, and overlap usually, and crossovers, that kind of thing. Where you get to the big divisional or national level, you can have a nicer course.
Yeah, exactly. That's the thing about Lincoln at this point compared to even Heartland Park. It's like, oh my goodness. The pro solos are huge. It's like, oh, these are 2 autocross courses if you want for each side of the pro solo.
Yes, that's right. They have more concrete out there than you can imagine. It's just wonderful. We like it a lot.
Yeah, and the planes don't usually get anywhere close to us. The fact that you can also have a practice lot or practice area that just goes on and on. If you're listening out there, if you'll set up more 2-day events or just 2-day practice events, I know us from Colorado, we'll come out there. We will be there. We'll help you set up and even tear down, hopefully.
Well, way back in the day, I don't know if you ever heard of a guy named John Kelly who just passed away, and he was the San Francisco region solo chairman, and then for a long time he ran a newspaper called North American Pylon, and they apparently all ran asphalt. San Francisco region was a really big dog back decades ago. A lot of the people won. John would tell his people, when you get ready to go to Salina, when you get out there, make your first run and go so fast you know you'll spin out. And then when you don't spin, you'll understand the difference between the grip on concrete and asphalt.
Oh, yeah, and that's true. Back in the day, were you mostly on concrete, or did you have that same disparity from site to site?
Same disparity, yeah. We would go to the nearest concrete we would get is a place in Peru, Indiana, or Kokomo, Indiana, at an Air Force base, a Grissom Air Force Base, which used to be the nearest really, really big site to us. Now Wilmington, Ohio, which is northeast of Cincinnati, is a very large site, and it's concrete. But around locally, it's always asphalt.
Okay, and that's where I guess we're now on asphalt. We used to have Denver, the parking lot out at Denver that was really grippy and huge concrete. I'm still hoping we figure out how to get that back. But I don't. Yeah, that's where I think still in California it seems like they have El Toro's asphalt, which if you have a chance to take a vacation and be out there for that, I love the courses they keep pulling off there for the Pro Solo. Amazing. Did you guys
That'd be pretty good. That'd be a pretty good run from Lexington, but it sounds interesting.
Yeah, how many of those can you hit on the way to vacation and then spend a few weeks out there?
Well, my dream has always been on the way to an Alfa Romeo Club convention to come upon some national tour somewhere and just drop in at some location that we wouldn't ordinarily go to and be able to run.
Exactly. Or I'm sure people would let you co-drive if you would dare. Now, maybe they'd have to have a red convertible. But
yeah, right.
I bet we could make this work, that somebody can contact you and say, hey, we see the Alfa Romeo convention is here. And
yeah, well, age has slowed us down a little bit, but we still certainly like to do it. But we run local events. We run 8 to 10 local events a year. We'd usually run a divisional if it's somewhere near here, and then of course always the nationals. So we backed off quite a bit.
Yeah, you say you backed off. Yet I remember when I started, I guess the first full season, I think I made like 8 events. So I don't think people realize that a lot of the people that get good and that are winning at some level or competing, as you heard them say, they were making 2 or 3 events a month. What other things did you say or see that really helps people over all these years? Maybe you saw some people that were just naturals, but what stands out? Seat time. What else really helps?
It has to be seat time, and also thinking more about it. Analyzing it, and rather than just getting in the car and just going off and drive. Thinking about what are you doing and why are you doing it, what works and what doesn't work, and I'm sure that I don't think the general population has all of a sudden become naturally better drivers. I think people are just trying so much harder now. The competition is much fiercer than it used to be, I think.
So
what do you think of this or not?
No comment.
She doesn't. Okay.
I'm just taking notes real quick here. I've been marked down that, I talked about taking notes. I can knock that out if I want to. Yeah, so that's where, how many people were showing up to local events back in the day?
Oh, golly. I'm thinking in our area in Lexington, Kentucky, 30 to 40 people would be a big event.
Okay. That's just crazy to think now that we're over 1,000 people at nationals. So that makes sense that the competition just really, really increases when you have that. Plus the technology, like you're saying, you've got video now. Were people taking larger VCR type cameras and recording their runs with those?
They might have been. We've never gotten into much of the technology stuff.
I can recall seeing, before everything became miniaturized, I can recall seeing relatively large cameras permanently fastened to cars, and of course they were so large that they were very, very prominent, so you couldn't help but see it. I don't recall an awful lot of it. I think the proliferation has come as miniaturization and cell phone cameras and what have you have gotten so popular.
Yeah, I bet surely some people across this country took what I'm thinking back to the 80s and had those big things. You'd put them on your shoulder, and they probably strapped them into the car somehow, or got the co-driver to try to video them racing. I would love to know if somebody has some photos of that or old video like that.
Over the years, I can recall locally, occasionally one of our members was an engineer at one of the TV stations, and I can recall having somebody in my car with one of those big cameras. And I said, now you really have to hang on and brace yourself. And I came to the first corner, and I heard a big thud, clunk. He lost control of the thing. I don't think it fell out, but I don't think he got very good imagery.
You're like, man, we need to get that on tape. Like, send me a copy, please.
Yeah. Dashboard, sky, pavement.
Yeah, because there's always somebody competitive enough to push that envelope to see what can we do, whereas now we have 2 and 3 cameras on the cars. And someone at Nationals had a camera on top, and it had a weight that would counterbalance it, so it would, with the G-force, it would look the direction you were turning. Did you guys happen to see that?
No, but that would really be good, because the standard camera, the camera's pointing straight ahead, and you can see the guys turning, and you can't see the course, so it's not really as valuable. That's really interesting. That would make it. That would make a video of a run really informative.
Yeah, I wonder what it would take to get used to seeing that turn, but not have the car actually sliding out, because that's what I perceive. I've only started playing video games in the past week where you race. But the visual is, when it's moving, it's rotating, okay, you have to counter steer. Whereas with that view, I bet it's on YouTube at this point, I've not looked, it's going to be turning as you turn. Yeah, it's got to be, I'll have to try to find that. If I find it, I'll put in the show notes so people can come back and look for that as well. So
I guess you could get that if you had a helmet cam.
Exactly. See, where are you truly looking ahead? And that's what's interesting. Yeah. That's one of the big things I always probably overemphasize is you got to be looking ahead to go fast.
Absolutely.
And that's
you're looking in front of the car, you're looking in the wrong place.
Yeah. James Yam was just on about 2 weeks ago, I guess, and he said that's what he's still working on. Even though he has 3 national championships recently, he goes, I don't look far enough ahead, or I don't really look ahead. I don't turn my head enough. So it just amazed me that he has championships, and he's like, I really don't look that far ahead, but I walk the course a ton to figure out where I'm going and what each turn is. What are your thoughts on course walking over the years? How much would you suggest somebody walk a course, and what are they getting out of it?
Dee doesn't like to do it, and I like to do it a lot. And the discipline you have to have is not make it a social activity. You see so many people with 6 or 8 or 10 people walking along jabbering. They're exercising, but I wonder whether they're really studying the course. So I like to walk it by myself and try to think about what I'm going to do rather than go with a whole group of people. But then again, I guess you can overwalk it. My biggest fault is I'm not very good at braking, and I tend to fall into road racing lines rather than tight lines. And road racing lines are very elegant, but they may not be the fastest way around a course. The outside, inside, outside kind of thing on a corner.
Oh, exactly. Dee, any thoughts there on your least favorite activity?
Right. No, I usually walk it a few times and then just get out there and do it. Like I said earlier, part of the fun of it for me is finding the way around the course. Of course, I don't go very fast, so it shows.
Have you changed that over the years? Back when you were winning championships, did you walk more or less then?
No, I think there were just fewer competitors and especially fewer women doing it, and I just happened to be in the right place at the right time.
Here's a thought for you. Really, who knows if you have the answer. What do you think would attract more women to the sport? Is there anything you can think of we could do, outreach, advertising?
Well, we had a little discussion of that. Some of the women at this past year at Nationals, and there were lots of suggestions like having a mentor and just inviting women to participate. but there, a lot of women come out to the events to spectate, but and our region allows them to ride with the drivers, but not too many of them seem to pick up on it, except for Laura, who just won her fourth championship.
She's talking about Laura Harbour.
Okay. So, yeah, some people are drawn to it for one reason or another.
Yeah, she's an equestrian competitor also, but she and her husband also, both autocross, and she's gotten very good at it, and she is very intense. So she knows what she wants, and it's not a social activity, I don't think, when she comes out to run.
No.
And she runs local events like that too. So these fond of saying practice doesn't make perfect. Perfect practice makes perfect. And that's what Laura does. She attacks local courses and national courses with the same level of intensity.
Yeah, I think that's important. Some people probably can only get that intensity if they go and do the larger events, but if you can figure out how to do that at your local events, and I'm guilty of not. It's local. Okay, I'm usually setting up the course, or maybe I even design the course, and no, I'm not going to walk it much more, and it's so relaxed that difference when you get somewhere to a bigger event. It's like, whoa, can I make this more like a local, or should I be doing everything I do at nationals at the local? So I've got, like you do, Dee, I don't like to walk the course a lot. And what I tell people is if I don't over-memorize it, if I pick a few things, okay, that looked different, I want to be looking there or be here on this exit, then I'm looking ahead. I'm a little bit scared when I get to the starting line, like, do I really know where I'm going? All right, look ahead.
There's a famous book that was written probably 50 years ago called Inner Skiing. And I think the concept was used for maybe some other stick and ball games like inner golf. And the concept there was to do enough work where you know what you're doing and let your subconscious go ahead and compete and do what it is that you're going to do, and don't necessarily overthink it, as you talked about.
That reminds me of John Ames, one of my mentors here locally. One time he was like, yeah, at one of our classes, you should be just evaluating how your car's moving over the pavement. And I'm like, what? I've got to call him Yoda. Like, what is he talking about?
Yeah, John's kind of a legend at his own time, and we said, well, a lot of people, can run over or can do multiple laps on a course and run over a coin at the same time, but John can tell you whether it's heads or tails.
That's a Series D. That was made in Denver. Yeah, that's
okay.
Yeah,
yeah, right. The Denver Mint.
Yeah, like I know that one's from. And what I realized, I think I may have told him this finally. The best way, or maybe only way I could ever achieve that was when I stuck the camera on top of my car. I've done some coaching videos for years now. I put them on YouTube. I'll make a run and break it down and put it on there. I found myself thinking about what the camera was seeing, and it was seeing me. Was I looking ahead? Was I doing something with my hands silly? Was I looking to see if I hit a cone? That is the only full or surefire way I've ever removed myself as driver and kind of been watching or thinking about what am I doing? Or, oh, I'm gripping the wheel really hard. At several runs I've had it where I'm like, you're really tense. Let go of the wheel. Like, loosen up a little bit here.
Yeah. Interesting.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Well, I was going to say, when we first started using the 5-point harness, people said, somebody told me, they said, well, you'll find that you're hunching over the wheel when you're just using a lap belt. And when you put a harness on, you'll realize that you'll need to get closer to the wheel. And I said, well, I don't hunch over the wheel. And sure enough, put the 5-point harness on and realized that I was, in fact, doing just what people told me that I was doing. Had to move the seat closer to the wheel so I could get to where my actual comfort position was.
And that's something I've realized, feel like David Fouth, I felt like he was hunched over the wheel where he could like put his head forward and touch it. And I started over the years sitting closer and closer. And the few times I've had the 5-point, same thing. I'm like, oh my goodness, now at least it does support me, and I should go outside right after this interview and strap one of those in. Yeah. I am using the wheel to brace myself so often.
Yep. I guess everybody comes to that realization at some point.
Yeah, it's ridiculous. It's like, oh, my legs are usually bruised from the silly seat I have. Other people said, yes, it's your seat that's doing that to you. So you recommend probably a 5-point harness to be secured in your seat.
I like it, yeah. Now, we finally got some really good spec Miata seats for our car, and you can buy the things in 1-inch increments. Solar Performance, SPS, Solar Performance Specialties, for a couple of years had them out at the Nationals, and I'd look at them, and I finally bought some. And you literally don't need a harness there. I mean, you sink down in these things. As a matter of fact, you get in so deep, I would pull on the steering wheel in the car to get myself out of the seat. And 2 years ago, I had to buy a new steering wheel because I broke one of the spokes pulling on it.
Yeah, to pry yourself out. Get up.
Yeah, but a really, really good seat certainly helps. But the security of a harness, I think, really helps a lot.
I just took a note for myself that hopefully I will see later. New seat. You reminded me that I drove David Whitener's car at the Pro Solo finale, and it wrapped around your rib cage area. I thought, this is so weird. But once again, it held me in there.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, these are just aluminum seats with a small upholstery thing that snaps onto it, and you get yourself down in there, and you can concentrate on steering because you're definitely not having to hold the wheel to hold yourself in the seat.
Yeah, or like me putting your left knee against the door and bracing yourself and leaning to the left hugely. And
okay, yeah.
All wrong. I'm sure the video shows some of that silliness. I should really take care of it.
Well, it is still fun,
Have you guys done much of the Pro Solo series?
We never did. We got involved in it. Well, I think we actually went in the early days. You had to apply for a license, I think, or some sort of documentation, and we did. And then just never got involved in it. Never did it.
Well, there really haven't been any around here, have there?
They had some in Louisville at Fort Knox. They used to have autocrosses at the airport at Fort Knox, and I think they had some there in the early days. But it's been quite a while ago.
Yeah.
I believe they've had a pro at Wilmington, and they've had a pro Wilmington, Ohio, and also Peru, Indiana.
At Peru, yeah.
If I was going to make an event, a national event out in your area, what would you recommend? Which sites are the best ones? You just mentioned
Wilmington, Ohio. Wilmington, absolutely. Howard Duncan says that's the best autocross site east of the Mississippi.
Okay, everyone, let me get signed up this next year. Hopefully I can make a pro out there at the very least.
We understand that Amazon or one of the big retailers wants to move in. It's a great big airport that had been the main United States hub for DHL, and they left some years ago, and 5,000 people lost their jobs. In Cincinnati region, SCCA had worked for a couple of years to try and get the thing, and we understand that the way they finally got it was they declare the entire autocross site a construction area, and they have to actually erect portable construction fences around it.
Okay, everybody, let's pitch in and try to buy a long-term lease or buy rights to lease the pavement. So tell me, have you guys taken many classes over the years?
No.
We took a few, but when E. Paul Dickerson had his training schools or whatever.
The first professional autocrosser was a guy from West Virginia named E. Paul Dickinson, and this would have been in the 70s. And if you look in the rule book, he ran a Porsche, and I'm not sure what stock class he ran. He was very, very successful, and actually had a traveling autocross school that would travel around. He was the first person I ever heard of that actually made a living from autocrossing or solo events.
Nice. I love it when people can figure out a way to take their passion and and at least expense the expenses if they have any income.
He apparently made it pay.
Yeah,
found a way to make it pay.
And that's where I forgot to say. So being on the solo site committee, I keep hoping, and one of the dreams and goals is to build a pad at some point. Do you see that, at least maybe in some more rural areas, being possible? Can somebody get $1 million together and secure some land, get a loan, and build something usable?
Sure. We actually use a pad here in Lexington that was a pavement, an asphalt pavement placed over the old city dump. And it wasn't a landfill. It didn't have a liner. It was just a dump. And when it would rain, evil things would leach out into the nearby creek, and they ran into EPA problems. And Dee actually found it. We drove by one day, and there it was. And through a long process, that's our local site right now. I suppose if with land you could do it. We actually had some people here in Lexington that were going to build a road course. And the guy told me that he had adequate funds, but they had to find a municipality that wouldn't pass a retroactive sound control ordinance. Well, while he was doing other things, somebody from Cincinnati attempted to build a road course in northern Kentucky, and he was almost finished, and then the real estate recession hit, and it never opened.
Well, and then they've had trouble in Bowling Green with the Corvette Museum course, with the sound level.
Yeah. The National Corvette Museum in Bowling Green built a very, very nice road course and a great big giant autocross pad, and they have now put a tall earthen berm between the autocross pad and the nearby residential area, and they have microphones, dedicated permanent microphones on top of this earthen berm, and they monitor that throughout the course of the day. And if the noise gets, it's 103 decibels is their number, and if it gets above 103 decibels, they have to shut things down.
And that's where Second Creek Raceway out here near the airport, it got shut down evidently or sold for somewhat of the same reason, and then you find out there's a circle track. And they said the circle track is what was making all the noise, not that road course as much, because the circle track was that much closer to
we
that.
went to Second Creek.
We've been to Second Creek.
Yeah, I'll be darned.
Yeah.
The Alpha Club of Colorado had a convention there. It's been some years ago now.
Oh, yeah, it was.
But they actually shut it down. Well, you run into all sorts of things. In Kentucky region, in Louisville, it used the municipal football stadium, University of Kentucky football stadium.
No, the University of Louisville.
University of Louisville, I'm sorry. Well, there are like 6 railroad tracks. There's the Louisville Airport, and there's the State Fairground, all of which make noise, but the neighbors couldn't make those entities go away, but they could make the autocrossing stop.
Yeah,
And of course, football games like make noise. We at the University of Kentucky site here in Lexington had a football stadium. We were able to use it for a while, and then the neighbors finally said they didn't like the noise, and they shut us down.
And that's where Second Creek.
Me.
Yeah, Second Creek is out there by the airport. Even I keep thinking being near an airport is probably the best place to be because there's already lots of noise, or it's very consistent.
It was way out in the country, wasn't it?
Yes,
yeah, but I'm sure it's not anymore.
Yeah, that's the thing is now DIA, you drive past the exit to get to Second Creek on the new road they put out there. And they have now built homes within maybe half a mile or mile of Second Creek. It's still there. I drove it the last day or second to last day I went out there. And once I'm glad I autocrossed because it seemed like a big autocross. It took forever for the next turn. But it was nice because it wasn't a huge track in my mind compared to our high plains now. So I've always wondered if I can dare build a pad, could I also build a miniature road course? And then somebody said, oh, and think about go-karts. Some of the go-kart tracks are actually kind of fun if you're an autocrosser to get out there.
Yeah. Well, we go to a track in Pontiac, Michigan called Waterford Hills. And when I first went, civilization has grown around it, and along their back straightaway there's a big, tall wooden fence, a sound barrier, and I think like a lot of tracks, they're only allowed to make excessive noise for a certain number of days per year. So the last time we were there for the Alpha Air Club time trials, they couldn't use the PA system. You had to look up in the tower, and they'd hold a number up to tell you what run group was going, and they had to be off the property and a gate locked by 5 o'clock in the afternoon.
No, I think it was like 4 o'clock. It was really early.
The track was there first.
Yeah.
So the track was there first. We're preaching to the choir here, but all those people built the houses and then complained about the noise.
Yeah, I can tell you even now I think about it, being at PPIR, Pikes Peak International Raceway, down south of Colorado Springs, where it was really noisy and the track is still open. They have built homes that are probably quarter mile, half mile away. And I'm thinking, if somebody's thinking about developing these things, I'm now thinking, hey, put a gun range right there also. That way, hey, you've got lots of noisy things. People should really know that, hey, if I build here or buy here, and or can you buy enough land that you keep people further and further away?
We have sound control. We have local sound control because there's also a minor league baseball stadium in the north part of Lexington, and we use it. And some years ago, a guy came from West Virginia with a rotary-powered hill climb car, and we said we had no sound control. We let the thing run. If you've heard Wankel engines run with no muffler, you know how loud they are. So we let them run. To show how smart we were, we let them run 4 or 5 more times, and then the police came. So at that point, we bought a sound meter. What we find a lot of times, the complaints come from squealing tires, not from loud exhausts.
Oh, interesting.
And I think it's the thought that somebody doesn't know what's going on is thinking that a bunch of people are getting away with an unauthorized activity.
Yeah, they're doing donuts in the parking lot or something.
They're doing donuts, exactly. Donuts in the parking lot, yeah.
And that's probably why we can't race at the Coors Field. They built lofts all around that long, skinny lot. And they kept saying, oh, this doesn't look good. People can complain so easily because they're so close to the parking lot.
Okay. And that's what, when we first started this Solo Site Advisory Committee, we found that when you turned in your sanction fee, it would say, are you at a parking lot, a racetrack, or an airport? And some years ago, it's been quite a few years ago now, we put 17 different categories in there, and the most popular category is PSS, for Professional Sports Stadium, and that's the highest number of autocross site uses in the country.
Yeah, exactly. You work around the schedule of the baseball team or the football team,
yeah,
and you get out there and use their lot.
Assuming that you don't run into sound control problems.
Yep. And that's where San Diego, they still race. I've only raced there once or twice, but yeah, right there. I mean, it's in San Diego proper, but at least I guess you have a decently large road next to it. So hopefully they're safe to keep that one. El Toro is, once again, except that they keep taking away parts of the park, that's just been incredible. You could have, once again, although you're shooting down off different runways, so much course, and there was nothing around it because it was 2 miles by 2 miles of runway strips.
Didn't they just recently reacquire the use of that?
They are still doing pro solos there. The last couple of years, they thought this is the last one. I remember I didn't make it there this year, or maybe not even last year, but they're like, oh, it's the last one. So I remember buying a shirt that I've now worn until I have holes in it, thinking, oh, this is so great, I can't believe we're going to lose it. So this next year, I really hope to plan that in, like, no family vacation, let's be available to go to California.
Yeah, that sounds good. Well, we're friends with Riley and Velma Boreen, and they're running around the country now helping regions with their solo programs. And Riley was also on the Solo Site Advisory Committee. It seems to me that he contacted me a year or so back wanting to know what we had, what issues we had about airport use. And it was some California site that they either were in danger of losing or they'd lost and they were reapplying. And I thought it was El Toro, but maybe it's something else.
Yeah, they thought it was going away. They're also at Fontana. I made it out there
that might have been
a year and a half, almost 2 years ago, I guess. And luckily, so you have a racetrack. So, okay, yeah, they had go-karting going on, and they had autocross practice is what I made it to. They figured out a way to make money because they have a track anyway, plus the extra money from autocross and go-karting.
Neat.
Yeah, that's more of that. Let's get more of that across the country. Let's all work together and figure out how to do this, how to pull this off.
Yeah, Raleigh said that they're going to, at the National Convention this year, they're going to have another big seminar on site acquisition.
Yeah, that's. I'd love to hear more and more. I asked Howard Duncan quite a bit about it. What kind of sizes minimum should you have for a national style event? It's just good to know. I think we should all dream big and think, hey, we can pull this off at some point. Just like I hear San Fran saved a lot of money. Of course, you need probably a ton of money for real estate out that area.
They're still saving money to build a pad, aren't they?
I believe so. And if nothing else, I think I'd heard, maybe it was with Howard, that can they establish a long-term lease, or can they do improvements to get a long-term lease? They might morph in from buying or building their own to, can we just improve something and have a long-term lease on it?
One of the guys on the original site committee was a member out there, and he told us maybe 10 or more years ago that they were saving money, particularly, and it was for solo only, that the road race people couldn't get their hands on it. And they were saving money to build an autocross site, or to buy or build.
Exactly.
So there's still, of course, you can imagine what property value is like out there.
Yeah. But that's the ultimate. I mean, having interviewed the Whiteners, I'm like, oh my goodness, can I practice more? Just have practice days. Or I've gone to California and had the practice day with 16 runs. I'm like, oh, I know one guy, it's not super close to here, 2 hours away. He started putting it on concrete. He was got a little runway. So it's really small, but if you had kids on go-karts, you have some concrete. Could you build 3 acres or 4 acres, a mini road course sweeper area coming back in and have some pylons? I think people can pull this off, especially in a group. They could create something that might have a couple uses like go-kart and some size auto pad. So,
well, it doesn't have to be a complete solid concrete or solid pavement. If you ever look at the aerial photos of the tire rack test track in South Bend, Indiana, it's sort of a course, but I mean it's not solid concrete, so they haven't paved everything. Yeah, you restrict yourself. You don't have free range for course design, but you have something.
Yeah, you have something usable. But once again, can you get a sweeper or get an area wide enough for a nice test slalom? I think one of the popular activities is to have an oval or a triangle drill. I've not done it in years, but can you plan out to have a few things that would be great for testing? And that's where can you work with maybe the police departments because they want to do this testing as well. I happened to be flying out to California recently, and I looked down on top of it's by Green Mountain for us. So it's one of the the name. It's really flat right there by the foothills. I'm like, that looks like a road course, and I've forgotten until just now. I want to look up what that is. I mentioned to somebody, they go, oh, yeah, the police practice up there. But it looked like a road course on one of the plateaus. I'm just like, how did I not know that's there? I'm sure other local people maybe know that, but I'm like, is that still open? I mean, I don't think anybody can hear you because you're above everybody else.
I have read of law enforcement tracks being used. Most people don't realize it, but SCCA puts all of their sanctioning information in a big database, and you can sort the database. You can sort it for these 17 different site categories. And it seems to me that I've seen someplace in New England there's a law enforcement track where they have autocrosses.
Oh, nice. So that's something else for us all in the smaller regions to reach out to and find out what do they have. I was even wondering if you could partner with them. Hey, if we build part of this, or can we get a long-term lease with you? Because something tells me
find out what they're doing.
Yeah,
yeah. You can. Dina Rowland will email you this database, and it's a great big long thing. But if it's an Excel spreadsheet, you can sort for site type, all the different site types, and you can see what different regions, how many people have airports, how many people have racetracks or professional sports stadiums or schools and so forth. And the goal with that was that if this knowledge is out there, then regions can contact other regions that have a site at what might be a potential site in a region, and find out what the other guys did. How did they get it? What did they use to get permission to use that site?
Yeah, as an example to tell, hey, these guys are using it. We want to do the same exact thing here. We're with the same organization.
Exactly. Well, we have a site in south of Lexington at a place called Eastern Kentucky University. I'm their liaison for that, and they called me a while back, a couple of years back. They had a new police chief and wanted to know if I could come over and talk to the police chief. So I got on this database and sorted and made a list of all of the 26 other colleges and universities in the country that allow autocrosses on their property. I went in and showed them that, and they said, we didn't know that. We thought we were the only one. So you could. I'm a big proponent of people slicing and dicing this database just to see what's there.
No, that's good to know. I've never heard of that. And that's another thing is, as Howard pointed out, these days parking lots need to be beautiful. But something tells me if you set up something where you're building something and the local police are also interested in practicing, they can help you probably get that to be flat with no curbs rather quickly.
Yeah, curbs and islands and light poles and that kind of thing.
And my plan is have a nice big flat area and say, I'm going to take the water runoff and plant trees far, far away. But don't worry, I'll use the water.
Yeah.
What other committees have you guys been on over the years?
That's the only one. We got started way back when Tasha Goodale was head of the solar program, and Raleigh Barine was the chairman. And it's kind of dormant now. We used to do monthly conference calls, and it's been 4 or 5 years ago. They cut the money for the conference calls, and the committee has sort of died. There's still a bunch of stuff on the SCCA webpage. If you drill deep down in, there are a bunch of things there, and I still get emails once in a while from people saying, "Can you help me with this? Give me this information or that information." So that's the only committee for me.
Yeah, we've done things locally, but we haven't done anything really with SCCA.
Yeah, I don't think people realize how much goes on behind the scenes to pull this off, and even these committees to keep looking for sites and how do we make sure we can acquire sites and keep them.
I'm encouraged by SCCA National taking so much more recognition of the solo program. You know, it used to be that solo was only merely something that you did on your way to becoming a road racer, in my opinion anyway. And I think now there's recognition that it's a standalone activity that's just as important as the other things.
Yeah, I think that we have way more members, if I remember correctly what Howard said, are quite, I mean, there's a lot of numbers of autocrossers involved paying dues that, like me, we mainly autocross. We don't do much on the track.
You're not about to become a road racer, right? Neither am I.
Yeah, exactly. I'm not going pro anytime soon. I mean, I did just interview Tom O'Gorman, so at least I know somebody else
we know Tom, yeah. He's what we call an alien. He's one of those guys that's so doggone good that you just wonder, where did he come from?
Yeah, and that's what was so interesting, plugging back to the show that's going to be released right before you guys, is the rumors like, oh, he go-karted. He goes, no, I autocrossed first. But he started playing video games at like the age of 7, I want to say, or 9.
Yeah.
That's a new element. I think that has a lot to do with the competitiveness and the skill of a lot of people. I don't do it, but...
Yeah, Brian Highcotter, same thing. I mean, he could play video games, obviously, as well as drive a physical car. And that's where it was only this week I'm glad that I had actually tried to play an online game with a steering wheel and pedals before talking to Tom, because I had at least a bit understanding what's going on, and these new wheels give you feedback. So when the tires are over input or you hit the curbs, it shakes.
Is that right? That was not just a little steering wheel. That was a full setup, right?
Well, the steering wheel just clamps onto either your desk or, in this case, someone let me borrow a stand, and my pedals aren't clamped down. But it's amazing the feedback, and some of the chairs I've heard will also shake if you hit the rumble strips.
Wow. Yeah, that's pretty neat.
It's just fascinating talking to him and trying to dissect, like, oh, what could you learn from that? I realized I could hear when the tires were over-inputting, but also he said he was first, I may change the view for my kids, that he was driving from outside the car and he could see when the car started to slide, he'd know to start countersteering. Well, the view from inside the car, the same thing. It seems like the people that have learned this way from playing video games, as soon as the view starts changing, they don't have the sensation of feeling the car sliding, but they notice from the visual. So they correct based off visual. Like, hey, wait, my whole car's rotating. Let's open the wheel and or add gas.
Wow.
And just imagine how much time he put in from the age of 9 to, say, 15 and a half. He said he pretty much only played racing games. So just, the competitiveness just from that alone, the amount of time they can put in. And let's say it's not real. Well, for him, he can drive pretty much any car fast, it seems like, or has proven out. And he said that he drove every car possible in the video games, just getting all that experience, all that seat time.
Well, the military used simulation for years, and the airlines use it. Why not the racers?
Yeah. And at this point, yes, I paid $200-something for a wheel that has all this fancy built-in things, but in reality, hey, that's a lot cheaper than even taking a trip out to Lincoln and back.
Yeah, for sure.
So, the technology keeps coming for us.
I can recall reading when Lewis Hamilton left McLaren, it's been a couple of years ago, as a Formula One driver, he had to sign a non-disclosure agreement not to tell Mercedes too much about the McLaren simulator, that these are multi-million-dollar simulators for the Formula One people. It'd be neat to get in one of those.
No kidding. Yeah, how does it make you feel the G-forces? Does it have a chute that squeezes you or somehow let you know what you're really experiencing?
I don't know, bro.
Yeah, and that's where you bringing up that made me think of some random thing I'm going to add in here. One of the big race teams bought a long tunnel underground because they could test the aerodynamics since they're limited on tunnel time.
It was Chip Ganassi. It was a railroad tunnel in Pennsylvania.
There you go. When I read that, just you're like, oh my goodness, the links people go to for racing.
That's why they count. That's why they time things to a thousandth of a second.
Yeah. Oh, and then bringing that up, I was blown away to hear in the Olympics for swimming, they round to what, the 10th?
Oh, they had to add a decimal, didn't they?
Well, they said they can't because the pools are not. They're not all exactly the right length, so they don't. So I'm thinking here, this is for whoever's listening on the Olympic Committee and all pool designs from here on. Make the pools like a foot longer and have the pad adjustable so you can make sure it's exactly the right length for each lane. Come on.
I'll be darned.
But so I think it's to the 10th or something. It seems ridiculous because we're timing to the 1,000th, and yet you're getting Olympic gold medal ties and such. That's such a weird. But they said the length.
They couldn't do it because of the pool inexactness.
Yeah, it's just not precise enough that they could do that. They said there's that much variance in the different lanes and the walls. Just boggles my mind. I didn't realize they're dealing with a lot of weight of water, I guess, but still, make it longer and then have your pad moved exactly correct. Come on.
The law of unintended consequences will grab anybody.
Yeah. So we are more precise than Olympians that are swimming. Please take that in. Who's going to take credit for that? I don't really care. Just be great to see them have it precise. You know, how about favorite memory of something you accomplished or something you saw Dee accomplish?
Well, I like to watch Dee winning her 3 championships. That was especially neat. I think we were the first husband and wife couple to do that back in 1978. Of course, it's been done many times since then.
Yeah, did you guys have any other co-drivers, or were you guys always a team working with each other?
We've never done co-drivers or tire warmers or anything like that.
No. The closest we've come to it is when we shared Velma and Raleigh's car that one season, and they've been really good friends that over the years with autocrossing and just doing things together.
Yeah, it's so neat when you can have a teammate that's always there. You're going, I mean, at least I'm sure there's some, hey, no, do this for me. You didn't do this, but you got the consistency there.
For years and years, we were the only people from our region that would go to the Nationals, and rarely would anybody else go to even a divisional championship. So we're a relatively small region, but a lot of people didn't travel. So Dee and I were pretty much on our own when we did all this.
Wow, yeah. So, and then you were developing all the friendships with people across the country. That's probably bringing you back more and more to hang out with other people similar to you also traveling.
Yeah, a lot.
Yeah, I'm still dreaming of that RV with a trailer and get the whole family. The wife would be cringing right now. She'd be like, well, make sure it's really nice.
In the old Central Division series, there were a lot of people that had RVs, and they were almost always multi-day events. So Friday and Saturday night, we would call it circling the wagons, and there'd always be a lot of socializing and partying and light hilling and what have you.
Yeah.
And they don't really do that too much anymore.
No.
So it was a period. It was a period in probably the 80s and early 90s when all that went on.
Yeah, really. And I bet a lot of those people are still friends at some level, or if they saw each other, they'd be like, oh, yeah, it was the greatest time, and have some stories.
Well, you don't want to reminisce too much, talk about the good old days, but it was a very interesting period, and those events, that whole series worked really, really well. So it's a nice, pleasant memory to look back on.
And now with Facebook, we kind of keep in touch with them a little bit, even though we don't see them. A lot of them don't even do it anymore.
Yeah, but it connects so well that, hey, you guys are tied together and you do care what they're up to.
Yeah.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, Facebook has me figured out. They know that, hey, we're going to show you 90% of what your racing friends are up to.
There you go. You can't get away with anything anymore.
Yeah, no, they know. They're like, you're in this group, and these car nuts are what we. They must have a little thing called, okay, these are car nuts. Let's make sure we share what's going on with the other friends, the other autocrossers, racers out there.
Yeah, very good.
Thank you guys again, and hopefully I'll get to see you out there next year as well.
Oh, we'll be there.
We're planning on it.
Sounds good. And have a nice weekend.
You guys too. Thanks.
Okay, bye.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.
Thanks for listening. For the show notes and contact information, please visit autocrosstalk.com. There you can also subscribe so that we can keep you up to date on new shows as they come out. Also, please leave us a review on iTunes and subscribe on iTunes for the upcoming shows. You can connect to our Facebook page at facebook.com/autocrosstalk. You can share your thoughts, your insights, your questions, your suggestions there. Also share with your friends. Hopefully you found it entertaining and motivating, and hopefully other people will as well. It's been fun, and I hope you enjoyed it. Thanks for listening, and check back next week for the next show.